Hey everybody, I am Stacy. I'm the owner and artist of New Creations by Stacy. Happy Friday. It's almost the weekend. So you guys, today we're just going to be working on the second half of the porch leaner. And give me just a sec here. Let me just make sure I'm live before I do a bunch of stuff. And we're not. All right, so you guys, if anybody's jumping on, just say hey, where you're watching from. It's not showing up for me yet, so let's see. Oh, perfect, there we go. All right, perfect. So you guys, if you're just popping on, just say hey, where you're watching from. And like I said, today we're gonna be finishing up our porch leaner that we started yesterday on the Chalk Mineral Paint Enthusiast page. So in the description, I've got all the colors, everything we're going to be using on it. And like I said, I'm an elite Dixie Belle retailer. So locally, if you're local, I'm at the Rustic Willow in Ardmore, Alabama, if you're not local. So stop on by if you happen to be coming through that way. Otherwise, if you did want any of these products, you can send me a message. I've got my website. Facebook has some things where it doesn't send it out, so it's not posted there, but it's just New Creations by Stacy. So we're gonna go ahead and get started because this is kind of hopefully I can get this done in about 45 minutes today. I'm worried it might be a little bit longer. But you guys, if you're popping on later, just do a hashtag replay, please. Let me know you were here. And we are, like I said, we're going to go ahead and get started. So you guys, I did a little bit more work on the one we hadn't finished up yesterday. I just went ahead and put the Let It Snow on here. So we're going to catch this one up on the table to this point, and then after that, we're going to pull this one out and finish it up so you guys can see how to protect it and all of that good stuff as well. So I'm going to drop you down. I think I'm going to have to go around. So you guys, if I miss any questions or anything, I will definitely come back and answer them after the live. It looks like everybody's pretty quiet right now. So I'm not live on, usually I'm not live on Fridays, but I definitely wanted to come back on since we didn't get to finish this up the other day. So I'm just grabbing out some of my art brushes that we're going to be using. And then also, we're going to go ahead and set our paint out. So we're going to be working on our hat. And we're going to need some Caviar, just a little bit. And for our snowman, we'll need some of the driftwood here. And might need a little bit more of that driftwood. And then we're also going to get some fluff out for our highlights. And let's go ahead and put some of the Honky Tonk Red out here. Just a slight touch of Haint Blue, just a super light blue. Like I said, if you're just coming on, I've got everything that we're going to be using today in the product description if you want to go ahead and make your own. And tell you what, I'm going to use these other colors right out of the jars, so we're not going to worry about those. All right, so let's go ahead and start on the hat. This last one I painted back to back. So everything was still pretty wet. I might have to add a little bit more paint today just to get a little bit of the highlighting going on since my base coat isn't still active. But we're just going to go ahead, start off with just this little art brush here with the flat bristles. And we're going to go ahead and let's see. We're going to add a little highlight to our hat. So I'm going to kind of bend it at the same angle, kind of around that my hat is. And see, yesterday, since my paint was a little active, this could blend right in. But today, it's a little bit different. I'm actually going to spray this a little bit. So this will kind of go through. Want to give this side a little highlight. And we're also going to, using the same brush, just going to wipe it on my towel after I wet it there. We're going to go ahead and put on our little bow liner here. And let's see. I didn't draw this out because it's not too hard. I'm only really putting the paint on one side of my brush here. Hey, Thelma. All right, and then, oh, I'm a little shaky today. So with being a little shaky, the trick to that is rest your hand. Let me sit down. You rest your hand on your piece, don't move it. And just drag your brush around. So that'll give you that steady hand to get that straight line.
I just drag your brush around, so that'll give you that steady hands.
Can you guys hear Siri there? She thought I was talking to her about dragging the brush around. Hey, Mike, it's good to see you. Are you guys getting snow up there? All right, so when I'm doing the edges, I'm just kind of putting my brush down and coming around. So I'm taking this red out just a little bit farther than the edge of the hat. Just because, you know, if you have this, like a ribbon or whatever it is going around the hat, it's going to come out a little bit farther than the hat in real life. So we're going to raise this one up a little bit. Come back, kind of line up this other side here. Just gonna add a little bit more water to my brush. Right now I'm using the mister bottle, but I also have a little cup of water out here. If you don't have a mister bottle, that little cup of water works great. You just dip your brush in, wipe it off on your paper towel, and we're just gonna straighten up this edge over here. And you'll be able to see, I know in some cases my hand is going to be blocking this. You'll kind of be able to see where this is going here. So some of that white that I just painted on, it's still wet. That's okay. It's giving my little bow a highlight. Over on this side, that's perfect. You just give us a little bit more dimension. Okay. When we're not done with the hat yet, but as we let that dry up, I want to clean my brush off, so I'm just putting in a little bit of the water. I don't have to have all the red off. But while we're letting that hat dry up a little bit, actually let me go ahead and stick. You want to be careful. I'm going to go ahead and give this part a little bit of a highlight. It's got a little red tint, but I'm not worried about that. I'm going to start turning my brush to the side to kind of taper that off. I'm not worried about that red tint, you guys, because we're going to come in and do a little bit more stuff with this. So ideally, if I wasn't doing this live and all back to back so quick, probably start at this end down here just so that I wouldn't rest my hand in the paint, but otherwise I'm just trying to be careful of it. I'm going to extend this line out a little bit here. I'm going to give this side just a little tiny little bit of a highlight there. Mix a little black in, because I don't want this to be so bright. Just going to kind of go over that, blend it in a little bit. It's doing its own blending. I'm not really doing anything extra. Just kind of twisting my brush around so I can bring it to a little bit of a point. I still have that red tint in there, but that's okay because it could be like a reflection from the little hat bow. All right, so now we're going to come in with some evergreen. Let's go ahead and put the stripes on the scarf. Oh, wow. 4 miles south of you. Oh, yeah, Flurry's had ice. But you guys don't have... Oh, hey, Felipa, how are you? But you guys don't have any accumulation then. I know I was walking past the news today, just in passing, and I was complaining because we were at 30 this morning when I woke up. But I know some places are just getting hammered with snow right now. So ideally you want to stir this up. I haven't used it since yesterday. I'm just going to use the end of my paintbrush here. And wipe it off with a wet wipe. And we're going to go ahead and put our stripes on. So for our stripes on our scarf, actually I want to use a different brush. Because I don't want my stripes to be that wide. I want a little bit more control over them. So I've just got kind of a smaller art brush here, not quite as wide. So theoretically, when you're out to the side here, your stripes would be thinner. But, I mean, we're painting a cartoon snowman, so I don't know that it makes a huge difference. I'm just kind of doing my stripes. Hopefully you can see how this is going on. With the turn of the scarf, kind of. I'm not even necessarily going all the way to the end. This doesn't have to be perfect because when we line it out, you're going to be able to fix a lot of these things. My stripes aren't even perfect. They're not all the same width. They're not the same. It's fine. I mean, you don't have to be super particular. I know that's probably blocking that little angle, but... So we're going to come in here where the scarf goes over, and I'm just going to put like one little green stripe hiding behind here. Your stripes may not hit that way, but then we're going to come over and do our little stripe on this side. So right now, paint is really being loaded on both sides of my brush. I'm just kind of wiping it back on one side. No snow on the ground. Oh, thanks, Kaylee. All right, so we're just coming up with another stripe. I mean, like I said, these are not hard. These stripes aren't, but I mean, you can draw them on if you're worried, but I mean, it's just paint. You can fix that. Trying to see, I can't clearly see where I brought this down here. There we go. How about it there? This is just laying it out where we've got stuff. Kind of twisted my brush into a point for that last little stripe over here. And then we're gonna go around and do the stripes on the scarf. So let's see, I think it's coming right about out here. So when you're doing this part, your scarf stripes aren't gonna be in a perfect line because it's kind of, the scarf is kind of flowing over, and then you've got this curve up at the bottom. So you're just gonna try to, I like to meet in the middle because that way I can make it look kind of like it goes together. But if you just go from one end and you bring your stripes all the way down, I just stuck my arm in some wet paint. But if you bring your stripes all the way down, the angle's going to be off when you get to the bottom. So I just like to kind of go back and forth so I can kind of keep it coming together a little bit and adjust a little bit earlier as I see how they're going. I already know that I need to curve this around a little bit. So I just went ahead and did another stripe on the second line instead of going to the bottom. So my paint's getting a little bit thick. It's not going on quite as easy. So it's really just time to kind of wet my brush down and wipe it off. I'm gonna grab this. So I see some more people popping on. Just say hey where you guys are watching from. So if you guys didn't see the part 1 of this, when we did the board and everything else, we started off with the raw board. If you go in my timeline, it should be, I think, like 2 posts ago. I shared the link. It'll bring you to the Chalk Mineral Paint Enthusiast group, though, to watch that first live. So I know I've got to start bring my stripes together. I just kind of had to adjust that last one. And then we'll make one more in the middle. You can make them smaller as you get to this side, like the scarf was kind of curling under. That's it. I know it looks terrible right now, but once we start outlining it, that's when it really, and adding the highlights, that's when it really, really starts to all come together. So before we keep going, we're gonna go ahead and take our baby wipe, because yesterday we drew on here with a watercolor pencil. We're gonna go ahead and wipe those marks off. So you wanna make sure before you do this step that your paint is a little bit dry. So let me just show you what I'm doing in case you can't see down here. See his nose where that blue is, where I didn't quite follow the lines? That's what I'm wiping off right now. You guys, he's a little cartoon snowman, super, super easy. Just have fun with him. You don't have to, I mean, it's paint. You can fix whatever it is, and he doesn't look perfect. I'm just getting my little lines off around those buttons, making sure I don't see any other. I think everything else is covered up, so that's perfect. All right, so let's go ahead. We're gonna add our tassels to our scarf. So I'm gonna use a fan brush to do that. And I'm going to kind of coat my brush. Now I'm gonna wipe a little bit off. So you can always add more paint, but it's much more difficult to try to remove it. So I'm gonna come down here at the end of the scarf. I'm just gonna lay my brush down. And as I go out, I'm gonna kind of pull it up. So I'm laying it down so that closest to the scarf it's darkest. And then I just kind of pull it up as I go towards the end. Very, very light pressure on it. And that's it for that. So we are gonna come back now with, actually we're gonna come back with this brush. Oh, this one, perfect. So a little bit smaller. This one has a flat tip, but a pointy tip works great too. Actually, this is the brush I want. That's what I was looking for. So we're just gonna take and dab the red kind of on the end of your paintbrush. You're just gonna go along here, kind of put little dots along the end of the scarf, kind of bring that together. All I'm doing is just dabbing. So it kind of looks like it has some little tassels. This isn't perfect. Put too much of a dab there, so I'm just streaking out a little bit from a couple of those spots. It's just kind of thickening it up near the end. So that's it for that. We're gonna come back up to the hat now. It's a little bit dried out, but not all the way. I want this green pretty much rinsed off my brush because I am gonna go get some of this red highlight, a little bit more of it off the cap. Oh, thanks, Julie, you're so sweet. I'm telling you, this does not really take talent though. It's super easy. All right, so now we're gonna take some black. Not very much, pretty much just loaded on one side of my brush here. And I'm going to come from the outside of the hat. Just kind of bring this in a little bit. I'm going to wet down my brush. I'm going to come through, get some of this white. I tend to go back and work areas though as I see kind of how it's looking. I'm just kind of switching back and forth. So it's really kind of a little more blended using the same brush, putting very little paint on. Just tapping it down, dragging it along. Up above here would probably be a little bit darker, right above the line of the bow. So I put a little paint on, I'm just laying my brush down and dragging it over. Let's go ahead and bring this side together a little bit because we want this side of the hat a little bit darker. Same thing, I'm just laying my brush down, and as I go over to that shaded area, I'm just pulling my brush up so it's not quite as heavy there. It's almost like doing a little bit of a dry brush. And then I'm just going to paint the other side of the hat kind of in black. It's still got some white on the brush, so it's going to give me a little bit more dimension as I'm going along. I want it to be more black closer to the bottom, so I'm doing that whenever I'm first putting the paint on, so it's more that pure Caviar. So I've got another little highlight there. We're going to let that dry up. I kind of like how that's looking. And I probably put the most work into the hat with this little highlight. Just going to do a little bit more over here. I want to kind of get some of that pink out that I stuck in here by accident by not having my brush cleaned. Kind of twisting it to the side so I can get more of that point. I'm going to go ahead and come over here where I put that other part on. I'm going to bring that up some. Add a little bit more black because we want that a little bit darker. And I'm going to bring this, I'm trying to make sure I'm not putting my hand. I'm going to give it a bright white highlight. This is kind of more like a line right here. Just kind of over on the edge. I came down so I could tip it out a little bit. Just keep that coming around. All right, so that's good there. I think we're going to go ahead and start lining out our snowman now. Actually, no, sorry. I want to shade out my ribbon a little bit. So I'm going to give it a little bit of a black line. I'm just dragging my brush to the side here. It is easier to paint this all at once, I will say. Your colors blend together a lot easier because the paint is still really active. My paint has actually stopped for 24 hours on this snowman since I did the first part live yesterday, so it's not blending quite as easily. And we're going to come over here because I want kind of the same highlight in the ribbon. I just dipped in a little bit of red. I'm actually going to go with the smaller brush. I don't have as much control with that bigger one, but I want to get this green off. We're going to take some of this right here. We're going to streak it across. I'm going to come back with some of this red. Streak it over. So see, I really wouldn't be putting this red back on here if my paint was still active. because I wouldn't need to add that red in order to get that blend. So you guys, this will be a lot easier whenever you're doing it, if you're doing it back to back. And let's make his hat look like it's coming. You want to add a little shading on this side so we can make it look like it's coming back over. And we're going to get a little bit of that red, because you want it to kind of mix together a little bit. And I'm not making a perfect line. All I'm doing is setting my hand down and pulling some of that black over. So now I think we're going to go ahead and start lining it out. And as this starts to dry, it'll start to look a little bit different up here. And a lot of times I'll come back and just add little stuff here and there. So on the bottom, I'm not going to use a liner brush because I want my snowman to be really kind of lined out down here. Let me make sure you guys can see. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to tip off. First of all, I'm going to want to make sure you can see. I'm getting the paint all over my brush, but I'm pulling it over to the side of my plate to kind of wipe it off a little bit. And then I'm going to dip back in for my final little bit. And I'm doing that so the paint will glide and it will kind of give me a nice little good tip here. So this side might be a little hard to see, but I want it to be the darkest, or excuse me, not the darkest. I want this one to be the lightest. But I'm not using a liner brush because I want this to be a little bit thick and kind of blend up down here. So all I want to do is get that excess paint off my brush, take a little bit of driftwood. So you really don't have to do this part with the driftwood if you're going back to back. But I want to soften the inside of that line. I want it kind of thick and I want it to kind of blend up. Bring a little bit over onto the side there. You can do a little finger painting too. So we're going to get this other side. We're just going to line it out. So first I sprayed my brush. I'm just going to get the excess paint off. Same thing here. I want my brush pretty saturated with the paint on that one side. So now this side I want to be a little bit darker. This is probably going to be the easiest side for you guys to see. And let's say you made I'm doing this line a little bit thicker. Let's say you messed up the shape of your snowman. Here's where you can go back and fix it too. So we got that on. And go ahead and take some driftwood. Like I said, I want this side to be shaded a little bit more. I got too much paint on here, more than I want. And we're just going to push right up to that line so we can soften it up. Wipe that excess off. I'm going to add some driftwood to kind of reduce that gray. As I come up, I'm just adding a little bit more so it'll kind of go right in, darkening up that bottom section. And by the way, when I line out the rest of this, I just want this bottom section darker. So when I line out the rest of this, I'm not going through this whole thing. I'm going to grab a larger brush here, add a little bit of the white. Give it a little highlight up there. Give them a little bit more dimension. Bring them over to that side. And all I'm doing is pulling this white up so that it really blends. That's why I'm really just adding water to kind of make that spread out so it'll work right into the whole thing. So now we're gonna come up and highlight this side, but now I want to more so line it out, but I still want it a little bit thick. This is the bottom. So I'm gonna just use a slightly smaller brush here, wet it down so my paint will glide. And this is my darker side over here, so we're just gonna come in and I'm going to line them out. I'm holding. So this, I'm stopping right here because his middle body part there is going to come down and around with the liner. So now this is my darker side. I'm just gonna bring some of this driftwood in and kind of let that blend. Again, we're just gonna come in, not putting any paint on the brush. We're just taking water there to kind of blend that line, darken it up a little bit. And again, it doesn't have to be perfect. I just want that side to be a little bit darker. Actually, we're going to go ahead and create a shadow kind of around his middle here for when we line that part, which we're going to do in just a second here. So perfect. So now we're actually going to, on this side, I do kind of want to use a liner brush. And a liner brush is just like this. I kind of like the one with the longer bristles for this. Mine's kind of messed up. See how it's all splayed out? But that's okay. So I'm going to use the side without that splay on it. I need some new brushes. We're just going to come over here. You guys, I think this is going to run over. I know it is. And we're going to line him out on this side. All I'm doing, same thing the whole way, is just resting my hand. By the way, this does not need to be a solid line. Shadows aren't solid. So if you skip a little bit, that just adds to it. And this time I'm taking white instead of driftwood, because this is my highlighted side. I want it to lighten up a little bit, or it's fluff. And same thing. I'm going to come back with our brush, just with water. We're going to make that kind of blend together. Let it down, bring it around. All right, so now we're going to go ahead. You know what? I forgot to give him arms. Oh, he's a snowman. He definitely needs arms. So we're going to grab our watercolor pencil and let's go ahead and make his arm come out right about here. Let's see. Bring it up. Bring him off the page a little bit. Or not off the page, off the off the thing here. Let's see, if he had an arm and an elbow, he'd come off about right here. His arm would come back in maybe right about here. Let's bring him up like this. And maybe just over here a little bit. And over here, I'm going to go about even with the button. It's going to be farther to the front. This little arm's going to go off the page here, or off the board here. And then if he was going to come back in, probably about right here, he's going to come right over to about here. And let's bring him in this way a little bit. Make him have a little tree branch. He's going to be holding an ornament here. So I'm just giving a little bit of a, there we go. All right. So let's go ahead and paint on his arm. And we're going to be using chocolate for that. You guys, I haven't seen any questions, but if I'm missing anything, like I said, I'll go back after the live. I'm trying to kind of hurry through this just because I know we'll get this detail in a minute, and you'll actually, once we start lining this out, you'll be able to kind of see. So it would be a little rounded where it was stuck in his snow body there. And this doesn't have to be perfect because we're going to line it out, but you'll be able to see kind of how it blends a little more easily. Also, a tree branch is not perfectly a straight line. We're going to put snow on top of there anyway, so we're not too worried. I just trying to make sure that I'm not. And bring his arm down here. And we're going to do like maybe a little crease here. Biggest thing with the tree branches is you just, as you go towards the end, just want to make sure your line's a little bit smaller. Usually I like a liner brush, a smaller one when I get this far down, but we're just going to keep going here. Sometimes once I'm concentrating, I get a little quiet. So we're going to have to thicken up his arm some to support the size of those branches coming down. And I'm creating a terrible line. It really does not matter at this point. There's going to be snow on top of here. There's going to be all kinds of stuff going on. This doesn't have to look good. I can widen him out later. I could do it now. Doesn't really matter. And a lot of times my snow is going to be based on where I need to cover something up that went wrong, that I don't particularly like. So let's see here. I'm going to come out. Let's have a little crook over here. So this is not my favorite brush normally to paint something like this with, but it'll be fine. Make a little crook there. And we'll bring up a little stalk right there. I just kind of added that one in. Thicken this up some. There we go. And you guys, you can always add more paint. It's just not quite as easy to remove it. So the thinner the lines you make now, you can always thicken those up. Let's just dump it in the lid there. And let's see. Let's make this go. He's going to have a really long arm. I'm just dragging a little bit. Let's make him have another little spot right there. So I didn't even follow what I drew. That was just a baseline. I think his arm's kind of long, but that's okay. It'll be fine. Thicken that up a little bit. All right, perfect. So we gave him a few little arms there, or a couple, not a few. It's Friday. Thank God, you guys. Oh, thanks, Felipa. All right, so now let's go ahead. I stopped the lining because I wanted to know where his arms were going to be before I went too much further with that. So let's go ahead. We're going to go back to our small liner brush. Actually, I lied. I'm not really ready for that one yet. I still want a slightly thicker line. Instead of a liner brush, I'm going to use this one here. Just a flat brush here. And I'll probably end up using both. I'm switching back to the liner because I want a little bit more control. I'm going to start on this side because this brown is wet. And let's just go, had a little clump on the end of my brush. So you don't want those clumps. That's another reason I kind of work it around, wipe it back a little bit, and then just dip it in. Those clumps are going to give you little blobs, so they're not going to line out as well. So I'm doing a pretty thin line right here. I can go back and widen it up. Again, all you're doing is keeping your hand still and dragging it around. Or just moving your fingers, keep your hand, I just stuck it. Let's go ahead and do this part down here because I had to put on my glasses right quick so I can see where this circle line is. So I can't really see where my bottom is. So I'm just I'm doing a little bit of shading. My paint is kind of dry on here. I didn't wet my brush. So it's giving me a skippy look. And that's what I'm going for. So that's how you create that skippy look. Now I want to be able to get a nice line. And the reason I do that skippy look in a situation like that is when you can't exactly see where you're supposed to be lining. You want to do the skippy thing because most of the time it looks good anyway. And you also can go back and fix that usually pretty easily. So I'm just thickening that up some. Anytime my brush is touching, my hand is resting, I'm only moving my fingers. You want to keep your brush wiped off just so you can get that thin line. So on this side, like I said, we want our line a little bit thicker. This is the back side. Again, wiping my paint off. You want to keep that brush fluid and moving so that you can get, hopefully my head is not blocking the camera. So you can get those lines. So we're just skipping over the arm here. And we are outlining his other side. We're going to come up. Just dragging, moving the fingers. You can pull up the pressure on your brush when you want to slim out your line. I'm going to go ahead and line the other side of him. That'll give this side a chance to dry out some. You want to line the things that are in the background first, if at all possible. Which is why we're doing his body now. So, you guys, I'm sorry, I'm probably going to have to block you with my hand again. But this is the only way that I can steadily do this line. Otherwise, my hand, and I can line sometimes with my hand not resting, but I've probably had too much coffee today. I'm a little bit shaky right now. So, perfect. So let me give you a close-up. You're going to see it's not a solid line. It kind of skipped. But this is kind of how it looks right here. But look, get up close. You're going to see that's not a solid line. It's not perfect. But it comes together. All right, so let's go ahead and just line out his arms a little bit. I think I dropped something over there. It doesn't matter. I should have got another little cup of water because my water is just done already. So we're gonna line out the bottom of his arms, kind of. And I don't want this line very thick. I want it pretty thin. Same thing I just did a minute ago. So if you have a spot like on your branch you want it to thicken up at this point, you can thicken it up with this. Pretty much just want to keep this. All I'm doing is skipping it down over the brown. So my brown was pretty bad over here. I didn't have that straight line going on. So all I'm doing is straightening it up with my liner. So that's why a lot of that beginning work, it doesn't have to be perfect. There we go. Now we're going to go ahead and line out. You guys, if you have to go, I know this is a long live, but I want to go ahead and finish this whole snowman, show you how to protect him, everything. So I'm just going to keep painting here. This is just a lot of detailed work. Kind of shows you what happens. I just wanted to do them all live so you could have all the steps. So we're going to come over here. We're going to do his other arm. We're only doing the bottom because you would only really have, we're going to line the top in snow and give it some white highlights. So the black is only going on the bottom. And kind of like up one side. You can pick whichever side you want there. May put a little bit in the crook, but that's actually going to be covered by snow too. So let's go ahead. We'd have a shadow now on this side. It's kind of, I'm not lining the whole arm either. I'm kind of skipping it around. I'll bring you in close to show you that as well. You can also use the black to almost thin out a branch as well. And that's pretty good. So that's it. And I'm going to go ahead and work on the scarf a little bit, because I do want to do a little shading on it. So we're going to take a little bit of the black. And first of all, I have, actually, let's go ahead and line it first. And then we'll get to the shading. The reason I'm lining it first is technically my scarf, you want to do the background, what's in the back first, and technically this part of the scarf is the back. So I want to give this a little bit of shading, but I don't feel like adding more red. I'm just going to streak my little liner brush over to give it some little black lines there. That's just another way you can shade outside of the blending. So I've got to straighten up my scarf a little bit too here. So we're gonna make this top line a little bit thicker. Bring it over. It's kind of where it would go under the scarf. I did my red up too far, so this is how you just fix those things. You can dot it in and add some more of those little lines out so that I am gonna add a tiny bit of red up here. I want to kind of look more like shading than just a line. So perfect, that just takes care of that little spot. And then you guys, I'm trying to hurry. I know this is so long. I think the first one probably took me about an hour and a half, 2 hours to paint. So on this one, I'm right about at probably about an hour and 20 minutes of work time on it. So I'm just trying to get it done as quickly as I can. I may just stay quiet and paint live. But if you guys have to pop off, you can always come back later. You can kind of fast forward through some of this lining because it's pretty much the same thing all the way around. If your brush isn't dragging, that's when you want to add more water to it. Kind of give it a little bit of a shading kind of down over here too. I'm just doing those little lines. Kind of a little dabbing too. Just to make it look a little bit darker. These are readers, and every time I look up, I can't see what's going on, but I need it to really get into the details on here. All right, so now we're gonna line out our scarf. And this is kind of coming up over the bottom. I'm gonna bring it around. You can also, let me tell you a quick little trick to this. I love painting. To me, doing this little lining is so relaxing. But if you are worried about not being able to line this out, get a paint pen. You could line it out really quick with a paint pen, and you don't have to do it with the brush. I like the brushed look on it too, though, because it's not like a solid line. Like when you start using a paint pen, it's pretty solid. Kind of this jumping and spotting, not every line being perfect. That's kind of what, to me, gives it a little more dimension. So I'm just going to add a little shading off of here too to this bottom one. And this is no great level of shading. I'm just kind of cleaning off my brush and the paint again, like I was originally doing. Okay, so this scarf comes out of the bottom of here. I'm going to come up this way because, again, I can't really see where I had my scarf line too much. I'm making this very thick on purpose on this side too, because I can't really see what I was doing there. And so I'm kind of just drawing that line in as I go. So I'm going to bring it back a little thinner. Plus it's kind of the underside, so it can be a little bit thicker. We're going to give it a little bit of shading. I'm I rush, though, the more I feel like I make mistakes. So I'm not going to do all this shading while you guys are on. I'll come back after and do it. You're going to get the gist of what I'm doing. I'm just doing some little lines up to give it some dimension there. I'm going to go ahead and line off, but I want to make this very skippy because we want to make it look more like tassels. So I want it to be pretty light there. By the way, if you do happen to drag paint around, you can just paint right over it. And then we're going to come back in. I want some bigger red tassels here, so I'm going to put those back on. I'm just with texture this time. I've got a lot of paint on here. I'm just going back over this line I just drew and kind of texturing it in a little bit. Also, I'm going to mix up a little bit. The scarf is looking too flat for me. I just mixed up a little bit of black and red. I'm going over the green with this black and red too. They're complementary colors, so you can actually shade green with red and vice versa. I'm going to scrub this in some with some water. Don't want too much because I don't want my liner to go. I do kind of want to scrub this in, make it look a little more shady and a little less... There's no paint on this brush I'm using right now. It is totally it's totally just water. I'm just dragging paint that I already have on here around. I want to shade in a couple other spots over here too. Kind of where you would see a shadow coming off. I don't want that brush. Here's the brush I want. And this is where you can have fun, you guys. This is where the fun is. It's in the details, to me anyway. This is the part I love. Come over, shade this side. Come over here too a little bit. And let's see. I want maybe a little bit of a white highlight over here on the scarf side. Let's go ahead and just give it. You could use the liner brush to do this. Let's do a little bit down here too. Let's go ahead and give our little snowman some of his, wrong brush for some snow. Yeah, here's the brush I want for snow. Again, I'm doing the same thing. I'm just kind of cleaning my brush in the paint. All right, so we're going to put a little snow on the top of his arms. We're going to kind of line it. Probably the better example would have been for us to do his hat first. This you don't want in a straight line, so you want to kind of dab it along. Wherever you think some snow might sit, like it's going to sit on the top usually. I want some straight lines as well for some highlights, not just the snow. And his arms are so small. Actually, this is the better brush for this right now. So you'd see a little snow build up kind of in the crook. And it's not going to go down like a crook. It'll kind of, snow will sit right there. I got a spot here that needs to be cleaned up a little bit. So let's actually go and ahead and give him quite a bit of snow right up here in this spot. So I kind of painted that top line on. I'm just kind of dabbing in for a little bit of snow. And now I'm doing kind of that dry, just highlight look on top. We're going to let this dry a little bit, and I'll be able to see where I want to come back and adjust his scarf. And I'll probably just do that after, because I want to get on with this. You guys kind of get the idea. This lining is working the same. We're going to add a little bit of a highlight to his buttons over here. Just kind of following that little side line around. Let's do some little highlights to his scarf on the top. Right up there. Kind of where it would, maybe on this side a little bit. There we go. And, carrot nose. So for his carrot nose, we're going to use a little bit of chocolate. To line that out with. And, you know, a carrot has those little, like, stripes that run up it. So let's go ahead and put some of those on there. Just whatever you feel like adding here. Like I said, this is where the fun starts. I think I'm going to line this out in black as well. So I'm making some little marks. As we get closer to the end of his nose, they're getting smaller. And let's go ahead. I'm just using my dirty water over there. It's not going to hurt anything. Let's give it a little bit of a thicker black too down here. And kind of skip where we had that brown at. As your line goes back, you want it to get thinner. Yesterday I messed up the tip of his nose. I told you guys it didn't matter because once we line it out, it's going to be perfect. So now let's go ahead and go on the top with a little bit of white where you'd have that highlight. And let's see here. It's kind of, when you're sitting off to the side, it's a little bit hard. I'm just very lightly dragging this brush up here. Something's going on with his nose. It doesn't feel right to me. I don't know how it looks on camera, but we'll see it a little bit closer. And let's go ahead. Do a little bit of black at top, but I want it to be thicker, so let's come around this part a little bit. Just kind of dotting it on. Very, 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 very light. You barely see this. Okay, so where I messed up his nose, I told you I guys messed it up at the top. I'm going to go ahead and take a little bit of white and just drag it up like it's part of his face. Drag it out. Then we're going to come back along here with the same brush. With that dark that's still wet, just to make it look like the carrot's still on top and that's still in the background. So I don't think I'm going to highlight any of his, I don't think I'm going to highlight his eyes, but we do want to come back up. You could put a cute little holly thing over here or anything. Let's go ahead and add the snow because this is actually the great example of adding the snow on here. My brush dried up a little bit. So we're just going to get that caked up paint out. Let's come back with this. So the edge of his the edge of his hat will have a little bit more snow probably accumulating. up here. And then let's do some right over here. Kind of in a bad spot. I'm having trouble seeing. So this is really going to bring this out from the other part. You just dab your brush on. You can just use the corner if you want to. It's okay if you go a little over. I mean, it's not like snow is like super even or anything. And smooth it out. This is probably the longest live I have ever done. I think we're coming up on like an hour and 5 minutes here. I'm going to add snow to this. I will do the rest later. You see how this is, I mean, you kind of see how this is going. I'll probably even add the rest of the snow because I'm going to move on. I feel like I've held you long enough. And you're just kind of watching me do the same steps. Over and over here. My brushes are kind of caked up. Normally I do clean them as I go a little bit. But I'm just putting some extra paint on this liner brush. You kind of want the snow to be a little bit textured. And of course you'd have it in this other corner, maybe kind of somewhere over here. Might be going down. It's going to sit a little above the hat line, so you're not going to line it exactly. And I'm sure I'll add more snow, but you see the idea of how to add that snow, how to highlight it, how to get your snowman where you want him to be. And like I said, I'll go ahead and finish this up. I didn't line out his head, but it's just the same thing, the same way we lined out his body. So you can see kind of how that hat's coming together, how it gives it a little dimension, his scarf with the white highlights, his little buttons, his snowy arms, all that good stuff. We are actually going to switch over. Well, that didn't sound good. We're going to switch over to this one. So the other thing I did was I just put white dots all over it for the snow. So, I mean, you're just going to, just like you did the other dots that we did on here. And then I hand painted this Let It Snow. My advice, just pick up a stencil. You can cut one with the Cricut. Otherwise, you can hand paint it. You're going to paint it with the same brush or brushes, depending on how thick you want your letters, as these liners. But once you get this all done, the next step is actually to protect it. So it's obviously going to be outside. I would think it's a porch leaner. So the thing to protect it with is going to be Gator Hide. Gator Hide is made to be water repellent. So it's going to give you that protection that you need for the outside. Guys, this is a super quick step. This is how I put my protectant on furniture too. It's so easy. You want to make sure your paint is totally dry. That's why we're not close-up picture of each section so we can see the finishing touches. I can. And I tell you what, I didn't get to do that entire snowman. I hate to keep you on here for so long. I will go ahead and, this is the first snowman I painted him exactly the same way. I tried to keep it the same so you could see all those steps. And I think I did every part of his body on here. And you know what? Well, let me ask you this. While I'm protecting this one, do you want to see how I did the lettering? I feel like if I would have had a Christmas stencil, that's what I would have used. No doubt. So all I'm doing is putting some protectant on here, and I'm just running it across. This is the easiest way. So you don't have a whole ton of work time with Gator Hide. You're only going to be able to make a couple passes. Once it starts sticking, you want to just stop. So, you know what, Thelma? When I stage these, which I will probably be doing this weekend, I'm sure I'll be doing it this weekend. I will when I stage it, I'll take a picture of each section and post it. So that way, if you go to paint your own snowman, you'll be able to kind of see if you want to do it kind of the same way with the highlights. And I'm sorry, I hate keeping you on here for so long. And I feel like you're watching me do the same thing. Okay, so now I want to really stop doing this because I can feel it start to drag. Kind of closer to this side where it's already starting to dry. I'm going to go ahead and run this along my sides. And by the way, you guys, I didn't on these because I didn't want to take more time live with repetitive stuff. But I will stain the back of this and I'll protect the back of it. Because you want to have years of use from it. So you want to make sure the whole thing is protected. Mainly I'm doing the sides right now. I'll do a better job on those later. But I just want to make sure that I've got all my drips off. But protecting is super easy with an applicator pad. It's much easier than using a brush. You don't really have to worry about streaks or anything else like that. So we've got this done. And once it's protected, the last thing I'm going to do, I'm actually making these 3D. This is just my own thing here. So I have painted, I'm going to just show you what I'm going to do right quick. I actually want these kind of a little bit brighter. So these are wood Christmas ornaments. They came from the Dollar Tree. I already have one coat of paint on them, but I want it to be a little bit thicker. So one thing, you can use these like stamps and put paint on them, and you could add more snowflakes to your piece. I'm going to actually glue these on, but I want the snowflakes to be a brighter white. So I want 2 coats. So I simply just painted that snowflake up. It's Fluff. And I intended to glue these on. I'm going to wash the back off because I don't want this fluff on the back when I'm placing this down. But all I'm going to do is, I'll probably only glue 1 on because I've already had you guys on for so long. I'm actually going to put 3 on. Oh goodness, which one did I just paint? This one, it's still wet. All right. So I'm just adding glue. This is Type Bond wood glue, you guys. I do carry this in the store as well. I'm not going all the way out because I'm going to have this slightly off the board. And I think I don't want to have to replace this. I want it to go down once and not have a lot of glue that comes out, but I'm definitely going to need to clean it up, I can see. So you see I'm putting the snowflake up here. I'm just going to show you where they're going to lay. I won't glue them all on and paint them. I think I'm actually going to put one up here. So I'll be a little bit even. It'll be like he's catching this. You could also use a snowflake stencil, any of that. That's going to take up some of this space down here and then also give me like a line of sight. I've got the ornament design-wise. It's going to give me a zigzag to keep you always on the sign. But this is it. This is how he turns out. So you can see I'm not going to hold him up or stand him up just because I've got this on here. And he's still drying otherwise, but that's it. And I will finish lining him out and go from there. So you can see just kind of the lining that we did today, how it kind of looks on the bottom. You can see, just want to make sure you guys have a close-up. So So thank you guys again for hanging out with me. I have never went this long on a live. I am so sorry. It's been an hour and 15 minutes. But I hope you guys have a wonderful weekend. I'll be posting finished pictures soon here. So take care. Have a good night.